They said the third secret was finished, revealed, done. But something changed. Something that Vatican insiders are whispering about again tonight. In the marble halls beneath St. Peter's Dome, a name keeps echoing. Tagle. Because just months after Pope Leo XIV, the man once known as Cardinal Robert Prevost, took the chair of Peter in May 2025, the air in Rome began to shift. Not political, spiritual, something unseen. He spoke gently. Dilexi te, I have loved you. But behind those words, hidden in the ink of his first apostolic letter, some say there was a code, a pattern, a warning. October 9th, 2025. The world only saw a message about love, poverty, and mercy. But deep inside the Curia, cardinals were murmuring that the document contained a hidden paragraph, a reference that matched the unreleased part of Fatima's third secret. And the one who noticed it first was Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, the man long called the Heart of Asia, the one many thought would be Pope himself. He read the lines twice, then 3 times, and whispered to his aide, he knows. Now, Vatican corridors are alive again with the same strange energy that followed the visions of 1917. Files once sealed since the time of John Paul II have been requested for review. Old translators recalled to Rome, and the security logs, the ones tracking who entered the secret archives, suddenly blanked for 3 hours. Coincidence? Or something being rewritten? They say Pope Leo has begun undoing the financial chains left by his predecessor, freeing accounts, restoring control. But what if money was never the real issue? What if control, spiritual control, was? Because deep inside that same Vatican vault, there's a folder stamped non divulgare, do not release, and a single signature beneath it, L.A. Tagle, rumor or revelation, no one knows yet. But one thing is clear, the man who once smiled at every crowd now carries eyes heavy with something divine, or dangerous. As dawn rises over Rome, the bells of St. Peter's ring louder than usual. Tourists hear music, but the faithful who listen closely feel warning, because when the church hides something for a reason, and heaven decides it's time, nothing, not even the walls of the Vatican, can keep the truth from breaking open. That night, Rome did not sleep. Clouds rolled over the Tiber like ink, heavy, restless, ancient. Inside the Apostolic Palace, a light burned in only one window. The Pope Leo XIV, stood before the old map of the world, the same one once used by John XIII. Lines of trade, of conquest, of faith, but also of fracture. He traced them slowly with his hand, whispering a prayer that was half hope, half fear. Because he knew the church he had inherited was divided. Not by doctrine alone, but by hearts. There were those who followed the gospel, and those who followed power. And somewhere between them, the truth of heaven was being lost. At the other end of the corridor, Cardinal Tagle walked alone. The echo of his steps felt like a heartbeat in the stone halls. He carried a folder pressed to his chest, the one marked non divulgare. Inside a page, handwritten, faded, translated from Portuguese to Latin, and then to silence. He stopped before Leo's door. 2 guards stood aside, uncertain. The Pope looked up. You read it? He asked. Tagle nodded. I did. Then you know, Leo said quietly, why it was hidden. Tagle opened the folder, and the page trembled in his hands. The warning isn't about war, he said. It's about division. It says the bride will be stripped of her jewels before she is made pure again. Leo's eyes darkened. Then it has already begun. Outside, the wind rose. The bells of St. Peter's shuddered once, twice, as if echoing the conversation of 2 men who carried centuries on their shoulders. A prophecy was one thing, but a prophecy that matched the headlines was another. Because that same week, reports arrived from across the world. Churches burned in Europe. Bishops defecting in Africa. Scandals reopened in America. Everywhere the same word appeared, cleansing. Not punishment, purification. In the Vatican press office, officials spoke calmly about reform, about renewal. But in the shadows beneath the apostolic library, a different group was meeting. Scholars, archivists, even a few priests no longer listed in the directory. They called themselves Custodes Lucis, keepers of the light. And they believed the hidden page was never supposed to reach daylight again. Their leader, an old Jesuit with trembling hands, whispered, "If the people know, faith will turn to fear." But Tagle answered, "And if they don't know, faith will die quietly." By dawn, the secret was no longer confined to the marble corridors. Someone, no one knew who, had copied the page and left it inside a pew at the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Pilgrims found it, photographed it. Within hours, every Catholic forum on the planet was repeating the same line: "The bride must pass through fire before the groom returns." Leo read the words on a glowing screen in his study. He closed his eyes. Then he whispered, "So be it." He called an emergency meeting of the cardinals. The room filled with crimson robes, murmurs, and old rivalries. Some saw Tagle as a saint, others as a threat. One cardinal slammed a hand on the table. "You are opening wounds that never healed." Another muttered, "Or perhaps we are cleaning them at last." Lightning cracked over Rome, and the power flickered. For a moment, the microphones went dead, and in that silence, everyone heard the thunder roll like a cathedral drum. Leo stood. "Brothers," he said, "the storm is not outside. It is in us." From that night on, nothing in the Vatican felt the same. Meetings moved to secret chambers. The archives were sealed, reopened, resealed. A whisper spread that certain relics were missing, and that the disappearance coincided with the midnight arrival of an unmarked diplomatic car from Fatima. What was inside? No one admitted to knowing, but two nuns from the shrine swore they had been asked to deliver a letter written by a child who never died. The newspapers called it hysteria. The faithful called it hope, and Pope Leo called it destiny, because even he, the man who wanted peace, began to sense that this revelation, whatever it truly was, could either renew the church or break it beyond repair. Within 48 hours, the world was on fire with speculation. News anchors spoke the words Fatima's secret for the first time in decades. Pundits mocked it. Believers wept. But somewhere in between, millions simply listened. In Manila, crowds gathered before cathedrals at midnight, lighting candles for Cardinal Tagle. In Lisbon, pilgrims returned to the Covadairia, whispering the rosary with trembling voices. And in Rome, the Vatican's marble floors shook under the weight of cameras, footsteps, and questions no one dared answer. Inside the Apostolic Palace, Pope Leo XIV sat alone at his desk. The leaked page lay before him, and beside it, a single crucifix older than memory. He stared at the line in Latin, "The bride will be purified in the flame of her own sanctity." He exhaled slowly. Then let the purification begin. But purification never comes peacefully. Across the Vatican city walls, factions began to move. Some whispered that Leo was the Pope chosen by prophecy, the one who would restore holiness through suffering. Others muttered darker names: usurper, deceiver, reformer of ruin. The College of Cardinals fractured. The Curia split in silence, and deep beneath the Apostolic Library, among the dust of saints and skeletons of popes, the secret order Custodes Lucis prepared to act. They believed Leo's reform would expose too much. They believed chaos would devour faith, so they vowed to protect the church, even from its own shepherd. That night, a meeting took place under the old mosaics of St. Paul outside the walls. 7 men, faces hidden, hoods heavy with tradition. They read from a document that had no signature, only the symbol of the crossed keys. Operation Pietra Bianca, one said, before the fire reaches Rome, but heaven had its own timeline. On October 13th, the anniversary of the final apparition of Fatima, the skies over Rome changed. Not blood, not thunder, but light, white, blinding, silent. Thousands saw it. Cameras captured a circular flare above St. Peter's Square, like a host suspended in the clouds. Some called it a reflection, some called it a sign. But those who were there said they felt heat, not on their skin, but in their souls. Tagle fell to his knees. He wept openly, whispering, "The bride is awake." The Vatican tried to contain the images, but it was too late. Every phone in the square had already recorded it. Within hours, the world saw what Rome could not explain. Leo stood at the window of the papal apartment, staring at the glow fading over the basilica. He turned to his secretary. "Do you believe it?" "I don't know, Holy Father." Leo nodded slowly. "Neither do I, but I feel it." That night he dreamed of water flooding St. Peter's, but instead of destroying, it cleansed. And in the water, he saw faces, cardinals, priests and ordinary believers, all weeping, all reborn. He awoke with tears in his eyes. "The purification," he murmured, "is not punishment. It's mercy, but mercy can look like madness to men of power." The next morning, headlines screamed that the Pope had seen visions, that Tagle and Leo were conspiring to reveal forbidden prophecies. Nations demanded explanations. The markets trembled, and the Vatican's own guards received orders, not from the Pope, but from elsewhere. When Leo entered St. Peter's Basilica for Mass, a crowd surged forward, crying, shouting, praying. Some reached to touch his robe, others to tear it. For the first time in centuries, the Swiss guard drew swords in the heart of the church. Tagle was at his side. "Holy Father," he said, "the fire has started." Leo looked around him, the marble, the chaos, the desperate faith of humanity, and whispered, "Then let it burn, until only truth remains." The world would later call it the night of cleansing. Power went out across Vatican City. Candles filled the corridors. Priests prayed aloud in languages older than the empire itself. And above it all, the bells of St. Peter's rang 13 times, though no one had pulled the ropes. When morning came, smoke rose from the gardens. The archives were sealed again. The press was locked out, and Pope Leo XIV appeared on the balcony, pale but resolute. He spoke no homily, only one sentence. "The bride will stand again, not clothed in gold, but in light." The crowd fell silent. Then applause, then tears. Because even the doubters could feel it. The church was passing through something ancient, something holy, something it could not name. In the days that followed, Rome lived in a strange quiet. No tourists, no chatter, only bells and the echo of prayer. Pope Leo XIV remained unseen, working behind locked doors with Tagle and a handful of trusted aides. They called it the Renewal Council. But outside those walls, something else was moving. Leaks, encrypted emails between cardinals. Memos hinting that the missing relic from Fatima had not been stolen, but sent. Tagle confronted the courier who had driven the unmarked car from Portugal. The man trembled. "It wasn't a letter," he whispered. "It was a box, small, wooden, with a wax seal that bore the child's initials, L.C. "Lucia," Tagle breathed. "Sister Lucia." They opened the box inside the papal chapel. No relic, no bone. Only a folded cloth and a strip of film, old, black and white. Leo held it to the light. The image flickered into being. The 3 shepherd children, kneeling before something bright. But behind them, in the very corner, was another figure. A shadow, a silhouette in papal robes, holding a scroll, Tagle gasped. "That can't be," Leo nodded slowly. "Because the robe is mine." The silence broke like thunder. The photograph wasn't from 1917. It was dated 2025. Same month, same day, same coordinates. They realized then the message was never about a secret past, but about a future repeating itself. The Fatima vision was unfinished, echoing forward through time, warning that the shepherd of the final age would stand in light and shadow at once. Leo turned to the crucifix. "Then, Lord, it's me." But Tagle shook his head. "No, it's the church itself. You are only the mirror." That night, Leo wrote a single letter addressed to the Bride of Christ. He sealed it with the fisherman's ring and left it upon the altar. At dawn, he was gone. No guards saw him leave. No cameras caught a trace. Only his ring, resting upon the stone, and the cloth from the box folded like a shroud beside it. The Vatican announced he had withdrawn to pray in solitude. But rumors whispered that he had walked barefoot into the catacombs of St. Calixtus, carrying nothing but the crucifix and the mysterious film reel. A week later, the bells rang again, 13 times, though the mechanism had been disconnected. Pilgrims gathered, waiting for a sign, and then the giant screens on the square flickered to life. Grainy footage appeared, the same film, now clear, now modern. The children of Fatima looked up toward the light, and beside them, the man in papal robes turned his head. For a heartbeat, his face filled the frame. It wasn't Leo. It wasn't any pope alive. It was Tagle. The crowd gasped. The image froze. Then words appeared across the screen in Latin, glowing like fire. When the heart of the East meets the crown of the West, the bride shall awaken purified. The broadcast cut to black. Silence swallowed St. Peter's Square. Some say Tagle vanished that same night, traveling to the east, seeking the church's lost half. Others say Leo never left at all, that the two men had exchanged roles, each carrying the other's cross to complete the prophecy. No one can prove it. No one can deny it. But every year since, on the night of October 13th, the lights of Rome dim for exactly 13 minutes. And from the dome of St. Peter's, a single bell rings by itself. Clear, steady, and impossibly bright. People call it legend. The faithful call it promise. And somewhere, in the hush that follows, a voice seems to echo through stone and soul alike. The bride is not dead, only purified.